Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Sunday, November 29th, 2020, 10 a.m. Central, or thereabouts, in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Well, it's Sunday, and that means it's a rules retrospective day. And we've been working our way through the hirelings section. We did one on standard hirelings. We did a whole show on the Sage alone, since the Sage is a huge part of it. We got all the Expert Hireling general rules in on the last show, and even touched on the Alchemist. But today I think we'll start with the Armorer and move forward from there, getting through the rest of, or at least as far as we can, through all of that. I was looking something up earlier, which is to say I was flipping through my PDF of the DMG, the first edition. First edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. As you can see over there. And when I was going through that earlier, I was looking up rules on layers. I think we ought to do a show on layers. I'm not sure if rules retrospective, there's a lot of judgment calls, I think, involved with layers. Maybe it's straightforward enough, percentage-wise. If you're just going to do it by the book, maybe layers can be dealt with in a very clinical, antiseptic, by the book, rules as written way. Or maybe what we need to do is pull all that stuff up on a campaign discussion day. I don't know about building adventures. I guess you could look at it as an opportunity to build adventures. But that would only be if a layer exists and the players decide to go and try to find it, and etc., etc. So maybe campaign, maybe it's a world building thing. Maybe we save it until after the new year when all that stuff's lumped together on Thursday. Then we don't have to say what it fits under, since it's sort of nebulous. But look, here we are, looking today at the Armorer. We'll start here. We'll see how far we get. This occupation cares for and manufactures armor and shields. The Armorer is always required for every 40 soldiers. One Armorer for every 40 soldiers, or fraction thereof, in the employ of the player character, and only spare time can be spent on the manufacture of items. That fraction of the normal month not spent caring for equipment of troops can be used to make armor, helmets, and or shields, prorating time according to the number of men. 1 to 5, 85%, 6 to 10, 70%, etc. Well, I guess, theoretically, if you only have 20 men, 50% of the time of the armor can be spent on stockpiling armor and helms and shields. I don't know. That seems fair, right? This includes the armorer and the apprentices, which are assumed to be present and cared for by the cost shown. A workroom and forge costing 310 to 400 gold pieces must be available for an armorer, and the skill of the armorer must be determined if armor is to be fashioned. So we've got this nifty little table here telling us percentage-wise potential skill of the armor. Skill is equal to ring, scale, or studded. Above plus splint equal to all of the above plus chain. Skill level equal to any sort of armor. So they're saying that scale, ring, and studded, 50% of your armorers are likely to only be able to make those, and they suggest by this table that those armors are the simplest, and any decent Bailey keep has an armorer, says Excel 809 Truth. And the Armorers Guild is no joke. No, they are no joke at all. They are no joke indeed. They take their craft seriously. So 75% of all armorers, ring, scale, studded, and splint, are their stock in trade, and they will not have the skill, according to this, to be able to make chain and or plate. I assume, since they don't mention plate, but since the top 10% is a catch-all to include plate, that is included there. Leather armor, I'm guessing padded armor is in here. Well, we'll get down to that. If items are to be made, the following times are suggested for an armorer and apprentices working exclusively, assuming a 1 week period in order to set the operation in motion before actual work begins. So you have to set up a forge, get all your materials to hand, tools, training, I guess, in a new environment, even for experienced apprentices and journeymen. They don't mention journeymen, but armorers occupied for part of the month with caring for equipment of troops must increase time proportionally. So 1 week to get her all up and running, and then banded mail can take 30 days, chainmail 45, a great helm 10, 2 days for a small helmet, leather armor 10 days. Now note the asterisk down below. It says requires the services of a leather worker and facilities to boil leather in oil. Padded, no time at all. It also says at the bottom requires the services of a tailor who will be occupied for 30 days with the task. Plate mail 90, ring mail 20, scale mail 30. Both of those are a 3 asterisk deal. What says at the bottom, as with leather armor, a tailor must be employed as well. So that's a bit of a as with leather armor, and a tailor must be employed as well, which is to say both a leather worker and a tailor have to be available when making ring mail or scale mail because of what is worn underneath. Both of those, large shield 2 days, small shield 1 day at the bottom, requires the services of a woodworker. Splinted mail 20 days. Studded leather armor is a 3 asterisk, as we recall, as with leather armor, and a tailor for the studded leather armor. Splint mail has its own 5 asterisk notation at the bottom, requires the services of a leather worker and a blacksmith. Let me slide my wonderful mug over a little bit. Put me in a box in the corner. Oh, you know what? We're still on. Let me do this, and then do this to get me this without the scrolling. Standard hirelings. There's notation at the bottom to check out standard hirelings for costs for hiring a leather worker, a tailor, and a woodworker. Those are standard, not expert, as the armorer is. Separate paragraph for dwarven armorers. Dwarven armorers are twice as efficient, but cost 3 times as much. And they will not generally labor for anyone beyond 1 year of service. Gnomish armorers are 1.5 times more efficient than humans and cost twice as much. Dwarves add 25% to the skill level roll. Gnomes 10%. Elvish armorers cost 5 times more the normal rate, and they will fashion only normal chainmail for sale. Normal chainmail. But it is of the highest quality, and they can make it in half the time a human would. Highest quality, but normal. I don't know. All that language is a little vague. We have to know, of course. George says a fitting or two could be included in the process to ensure a good fit for the final customer. Yeah, absolutely. I would think a fitting would be required. I suppose you can make a good number of helmets and sets of armor on spec and have them off the rack for new hirelings. And when you hire more men, you always attempt to hire persons of a certain size to fit the armor. I imagine there's some, a lot of armor can be adjusted. A lot of armor comes with straps and straps on, so there can be graduated holes on any strap, much like a belt, so that armor is adjustable on the fly without needing some form of tailoring, so that we're not on exact fits here, but we are on small, medium, large, if you will, maybe extra large. Maybe you need a quadruple XL for the mountain when he comes in. But maybe we just make him armor specifically for him, because who keeps that on hand, right? So a lot of ifs, ands, and buts. But the point I was going to make with the Elvish armor was somebody makes Elvish armor, Elven chainmail, right? It's got to be magically created. It's got to be of the highest quality. Are we saying, see, this is where we get into one of those things where, well, I started in the earliest of times playing D&D and got into first edition as soon as it came out. What I've learned since then from other editions and other RPGs, other gaming, maybe some house rules from people that I've filtered in and filtered out and don't remember where I maybe heard them from, or something I read online. It's impossible to know, for me, if I would have read this last sentence and thought the way I'm about to suggest it could mean at the time. Elvish armorers cost 5 times the normal rate, and they will fashion only normal chainmail for sale. But it is of the highest quality, and they make it in half the time a human would. Okay. Only normal chainmail. That's pretty clear. Highest quality, though. So in later editions of the game, elves don't mind as much, says Excel, as any other race. Don't mind as much as any other race. Okay. So they're lack of mining might have something to do with this. I don't know if that plays into this in particular. The thought I was going to express was that elven chainmail has to come from somewhere. Is it normal chainmail of the highest quality, then imbued with magic, or does it have to be made as elven chainmail? That's a question I may have to look up the answer for and find some sort of addendum under magic item making. Talk about it there. We'll look that up. We'll get back to that at some point. I don't think we should go off on a tangent today. Got a lot to go through. We'll continue. Blacksmith. There must be a blacksmith in each stronghold, and he and his assistants can care for the needs of up to 40 men or horses. Another smith is required for each additional 160 men or horses, or fraction thereof. Besides the usual duties, horseshoes, nails, hinges, and miscellaneous bits and pieces, a hired smith can turn out some weaponry each month. Each must have a workroom with bellows and forge, 30 arrowheads or quarrel tips, 10 spearheads or 5 morning stars, or 2 flails or polearm heads. Dwarven smiths are 3 times more efficient and cost 10 times as much. Gnomish smiths are twice as efficient and cost 4 times as much. Now here's another thing they don't get into, and I don't know if it matters, but does a dwarven smith require dwarven apprentices? So too a gnomish smith requiring gnome apprentices? Must they have others who are potentially as efficient as they are assisting them? That's a question worth delving into when you're setting up your campaign. Engineer architect. This profession deals with above-ground construction and fortification. In order to build any structure more complex than a simple hut or barn, it is necessary to hire one. An engineer architect is paid for whole months of employment, even if the work is completed in less than a whole month. He or she also collects an additional fee equal to 10% of the total expenditure on the construction. So, is he skimming? Is he just taking a cut? Is this, does that address the increased difficulty? The more construction materials used, the larger or more complex the structure, the more difficult, and thereby requiring an additional fee commensurate with the 10% of the construction cost total. The building site must be selected or approved by an architect engineer, or else there is a 75% chance the structure will collapse in 1 to 100 months. 100 months. Well, it's not even 10 years. Interesting thoughts there in the chat on Elven Armorers. Last Elven Generations. Armorers. Yeah. Customer can have cost, time, and quality. Pick 2. Yeah, that's the old maxim. Cost, time, and quality are 3 considerations when getting involved in any project. Can only really pick 2. Well, you can pick all 3. Cost. Yeah, no, it's true. You can pick 2. Dwarven apprenticeship is inside the clan, between the clans of bonded kingdom. Since the dwarf kingdom consists of multiple clans in one or more clan holds inside the clan or between. I believe Excel is expressing that perhaps that if you pick up a dwarven blacksmith or a dwarven armorer, they would come with their own group their own apprentices. And that makes sense. It's apprentices. It's not apprentices. But, yeah. Yeah, I could see that as a solution to the idea of who would they have with them. I don't know that they necessarily have to be dwarves or gnomes, though. But they should have been apprenticed to this particular smith or armorer, dwarf or gnome or elf, and would come along with them. Yep, that's worth considering. What about Swamp Castle here? Collapsing, 75% chance. It's pretty huge. Will collapse in 1 to 100 months. So every month you roll a percentage. Or do you roll at the beginning? 75%. If it's going to happen at all, it's going to happen. We're going to know it's going to happen. And then we roll percentage dice on the months. Or do we roll 75 chance will collapse in 1 to 100 months? That suggests you roll and then at the beginning and then that many months later it's going to collapse. So one roll. Because let's face it, if you roll each month, that's going to raise the percentage. Over time, you'll never reach 100%, but just the fact that you're making multiple rolls increases the odds. So, probably roll at the beginning and then roll privately, put it in the back of your mind, and then come back to it when that month hits. Engineer artillerist. This profession deals with the construction and use of siege artillery, catapults, trebuchets, etc. No such engines can be made or properly used without the services of such an individual. If employment is for short term only, say only a few months or less, then rates of pay and costs will increase from 10 to 60%. Fair enough. Engineer, sapper, miner, all underground construction or tunneling, as well as siege operations, which require mining, countermining, siege equipment, picks, rams, sows, towers, etc., or trenches, ditches, parapets, and so forth, require the professional services of an engineer, sapper / miner. Dwarves are useful in the capacity of engineer miner only. They are twice as costly and add 20% to the efficiency of human miners, and dwarven miners will work only for a dwarven engineer miner, of course. Okay. Jeweler gem cutter. This profession allows for the character to have rapid and accurate appraisal of any precious metal, gem material, or piece of jewelry, except those which you as a DM specifically designate as heretofore unknown. In addition, the jeweler gem cutter can set stones in various things, sword hilts, flagons, or whatever, or fashion jewelry from gem material and precious metal. A simple ring will take a week, a bracelet with sculpting 2 weeks, with stones set 3, while a crown might require a full year of work. Basically, the work merely adds either splendor to the player character's personage by the display, or the total value of the materials can be increased by 10 to 40%, depending on the skill of the individual doing the work. Likewise, as a gem cutter, the individual might well increase the value of a rough or poorly cut gemstone, those under 5,000 gold piece base value, or the stone might be ruined in the process. Note that jeweler gem cutters cannot be held responsible for damage. Both functions are shown below. So here's a couple of tables, percentage die tables. Talks about the skill level of the gem cutter, skill level of the jeweler, how much they can increase value. No decrease in value for jewelers, say setting stones in a bracelet or a crown, even a ring. Gem cutters, however, the act of cutting gems, does have a 30% chance of from 1 to 30, 20 ruined stones. So no matter how good they are, they can always potentially ruin a stone. The better they are, the less likely, but it's still possible. You have to roll that separately from the jeweler's skill. Well, that is quite a thing. Important. Players should never know the skill levels of jewelers or gem cutters. All right? Keep that on the QT. Dwarven jeweler gem cutters add 20% of the skill determination rolls. They cost twice as much to employ as far as gold piece outlay is concerned. Gnome jeweler gem cutters add nothing to the jeweler's skill, but add 30% to the gem cutting skill. They likewise will cost double with regard to monthly wages. So that's pretty huge. Dwarven and gnome jewelers and gem cutters is pretty big. If you're adding 30%, you are never shaky as a gnome, right? On the gem cutter skill, which is good. Some more notes and ideas on apprenticeships beyond human expert hirelings. Definitely well worth thinking about and adding in some details, or at least keeping it in mind. One doesn't have to delineate these things or set them in stone. It is always possible that it'll never come up in a game. Mercenary soldiers. Well, I'll tell you what, we're almost at the 30-minute mark, and this is a good place to stop because mercenary soldiers is a huge section of the expert hireling section of the DMG. So we'll come back to that. We'll definitely deal with that in a future show. Another continued. Who knew expert hirelings were going to be such a rich ground to, such fertile soil to explore? But, for as much as they wrote on this, as much as Gary wrote or editors added, obviously there's a lot more to it to think about, at least. Details, points of order to include in your thinking of how that works. Now, of course, you can just hand wave anything in a game. No doubt about it. So for those of you who are saying, you're overthinking it, mea culpa. And I agree. You can certainly keep things light and fluffy and never delve into any of this. Never even give it a second thought. But for those who like that sort of detail, level of detail, and again, as a sandbox DM, story is a byproduct of game, but the more you put into the potential of the game, the more potential story you have coming out the other end. The better the meat you put in the sausage, the better the spices you put in the sausage, the better the sausage you'll get. And take that from someone who lived in northern Illinois almost all their life and has been in Wisconsin for nearly the last decade. Sausages. I may have some brats later today, in fact. In fact, I know I'm going to have some brats later today because I boiled some up earlier and have them ready to just sear in a pan and heat up. And good old Johnsonville's standard issue Johnsonville's. They're delicious. They're easy to throw together when you need them. Wonderful. Anyhow, there you go. That's where we are. We are saying, hey, Sarah showed up. Good. XL809. Hey, I've got a question for you. XL809. What is your first name? I want to get you on the list here with at least a first name and call you by your first name when you pop in. You're here every week, so. Question mark? Your first name is question mark? That doesn't seem right. I don't have to have it. If you ever win. Oh, Mark. Oh, we did do this before, didn't we? And I just didn't write it down. I bet that's it. My apologies. My apologies. Anywho, I think we're done with the show for today. We'll end on that sausages note. Do you think it takes an expert hireling to be able to make sausages, or is that just a standard butcher? Yeah, right? Of all the names I could mark, what are the odds? See, my problem is that my memory is long, it's just not good. So when I forget something, I forget it almost forever. Does that make any sense? Is that absurd? I think the interesting thing for me, or the tough thing for me, is names. I usually, on forums and programs, Discord, Twitch, whatever, I just use my name. It's usually some variation of Mark CMG so that people know it's me. And if they know anything about me, they know Creative Mountain Games is what the CMG stands for in my case. And that's what I do. Makes it easier for me, and I imagine people remember, generally speaking, who I am because they know my real name. But I see so many variations on names that it shoves something out, shoves something in. Is that Sherlock Holmes attic theory of memory, useful information? There's only so much room, and if you store a new fact, you have to jettison some old bit of trivia. So I just lost the knowledge of what a hoplite's shield guard is called, because now I'm remembering your name's Mark. That is... Was it useful info? We may never know. Anywho, as I said, that'll do for the show today. I want to thank everybody. Grieve. Absolutely. And I want to thank you all for following the Twitch channel and chiming in when you're here. I appreciate it very much. Got you all on the new list for the new week, so that's a good thing. I have not been able to contact the person yet. It's not somebody who's in chat today. It's actually somebody new, which is unusual, but there you go. And I want to thank them too. They were here earlier last week. In any event, thanks so much for coming out to the show. I do appreciate it. Hey, if you're out tomorrow, 10 a.m., weekly news and announcements, cartography and world building on Tuesday, campaign discussion on Wednesday, GMing tips on Thursday, building adventures on Friday, GM reviews on Saturday, rules retrospective, round the horn to that next Sunday. We'll pick up with mercenaries and expert hirelings and talk some more about it. If you're catching up with us on YouTube, thank you very much. Subscribe to the channel if you would, please, and give us a thumbs up on any videos that you watch and enjoy. If you have some constructive criticism or just want to give us an attaboy, feel free to make a comment on the videos. It's appreciated. Anything you can do to help us make everything a little better. Well, this has been the OK Grognard Show. I hope you had an excellent Thanksgiving weekend if you're in the States or anywhere. I hope you had a good weekend. Come on back. See us later in the week. Thank you very much, and bye-bye from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.